Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. Welcome to Outside Source. The White House has condemned the arrest of an American journalist in Russia. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is accusing the journalist of spying. In the UK, a man's been found guilty of murdering the 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel in Liverpool last August. The UK government's announced a new net zero plan, but it's been met with criticism from experts and environmental campaigners. We'll talk to Justin Rolat about that. And King Charles has become the first British monarch to address the German Parliament, and he talked about Ukraine.
The unprovoked invasion of Ukraine has inflicted the most unimaginable suffering on so many innocent people.
Hello and welcome to what is the last edition of Outside Source, but it's going to be no different to all the ones that have gone before because we're going to have a detailed rundown of some of the biggest stories of the day. And we'll start in Russia. A short while ago, the White House advised US citizens residing or travelling to Russia to leave immediately. This all follows a court in Moscow ordering that an American journalist is kept in custody over spying charge. Now we turn to an important story here in the UK. A man has been found guilty of murdering a 9-year-old in her home in Liverpool last summer. Thomas Cashman fired shots through the family's front door while chasing another man through the streets. The 34-year-old was also found guilty of wounding Olivia Pratt-Korbel's mother in the attack and the attempted murder of a convicted drugs dealer, Joseph Nee. Police say Olivia's death should not be in vain and that they hope that today's verdict will deter others from using guns on the streets. Our North of England correspondent Judith Moritz reports from Manchester Crown Court. Next on Outside Source, we turn to the second day of King Charles's state visit to Germany, and we've seen the first address to the German Parliament by a British monarch. Here's some of it. We've all made that slip on occasions, I'm sure. Robert Lacey, thank you very much indeed for joining us, talking to us about King Charles III's state visit to Germany, and of course you can get much more coverage of that on the BBC News website too. Let me just quickly update you on the Pope's health, because we've been told that he is responding well to antibiotics for bronchitis. This has come from the Vatican. We knew that he was being treated in hospital, so we're being told he's responding well to antibiotics and being treated for bronchitis. That is it for this first half hour of Outside Source. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I'll be back with you with Justin Rolat, the climate editor of BBC News, to talk about the government's new net zero plans. That's in a couple of minutes. I'm Ros Atkins, welcome back to Outside Source. The White House is condemning the arrest of an American journalist in Russia. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is accusing the journalist of spying, something the Wall Street Journal denies. The UK government has announced a new net zero plan, but it's already been met with criticism from experts and environmental campaigners. We'll get into that in a moment. And Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, has gone back to Brazil after 3 months in self-imposed exile in America. Plus, we're going to hear about this new blood test which could save thousands of people from having unnecessary chemotherapy. Now, here in the UK, the government's released a new plan to reach net zero by 2050, and this plan matters in terms of climate change, of course, but it's also political. And it could have an impact on the UK's economy too. We've got a lot to show you on this. First of all, here's the Prime Minister. Now, next on Outside Source, to a really important health story, a good news story too as well, because cancer researchers in the UK are hoping that a blood test may allow bowel cancer patients to avoid chemotherapy. First of all, let's hear from Professor David Cunningham, who helped run the trial. Well, congratulations to you and your colleagues on the trial. Best of luck with the work that's coming up in the years to come, and thank you for explaining it to us.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Noreen Starling, consultant oncologist at the Royal Marsden and principal investigator of the trial that we've been discussing. Now, in a few minutes on Outside Source, we're going to head to South America because Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, is back home after 3 months of self-imposed exile in America. We'll bring you up to date on that. I'm Ros Atkins with Outside Source. We're here in the BBC newsroom, and our lead story is that the White House has condemned the arrest of an American journalist in Russia. The Kremlin has accused him of spying, something his paper vehemently denies. Now let's bring you a little more information on the health of the Pope. The Vatican says he's responding well to antibiotics for bronchitis and that the 86-year-old could be discharged in the coming days. He was admitted to Gemelli Hospital on Wednesday for what was initially said to be a scheduled checkup. This is the busiest time of the year for Pope Francis, with many events and services scheduled ahead of the Easter weekend. And as I've just told you, the Vatican says he's responding well to antibiotics. Now, we've seen a big moment for Brazil because its former right-wing president, Jair Bolsonaro, is back home from the US. He left Brazil of his own accord on the 30th of December. That was 2 days before this happened. The current president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, took power. It was 9 days before this happened when Bolsonaro supporters stormed government buildings in the capital, Brasilia. Bolsonaro condemned those actions and denied encouraging the rioters. Yeah, we'll watch out for that happening. But for the moment, he's back and he's reconnecting with his colleagues within his party. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Richard. There's Richard Lapper, who's Bolsonaro biographer. Richard's book is Beef, Bible and Bullets. Remember, if you speak Portuguese, you can get coverage of Brazilian news via BBC Brazil with an S.com. If you speak English, which will be many more of you, you can get coverage of Brazil through bbc.com/news. Now, just a reminder of our top story in this hour of Outside Source. The White House has been advising US citizens residing in Russia or travelling to Russia to either leave immediately or, if they haven't got there yet, to not go in the first place. Now, this isn't a huge shift in policy. There's been similar advice in place before today, but this is a response to a court in Moscow today ordering that a US journalist who had been taken into custody in the east of Russia, then brought to Moscow, well, that journalist has now been told he will be in custody towards the end of May, and he's being accused by the Russians of charges, activity relating to spying, something that Evan Gershkovich, who you can see there, his paper, The Wall Street Journal, has pushed back very hard at any of those suggestions. The White House has called the espionage charges against him as ridiculous. It says US diplomats are seeking consular access to Mr. Gershkovich. But as we've been discussing in this hour of Outside Source, as you can imagine, the diplomatic channels between Russia and the US are severely strained by the war in Ukraine, which makes resolving the whole matter much harder. Thanks for watching. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. Welcome to Outside Source. The White House is condemning the arrest of an American journalist in Russia, while the Kremlin is accusing the journalist of spying, something the Wall Street Journal vehemently denies. In the UK, a man's been found guilty of murdering 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel in Liverpool last August. The UK government's announced a new net zero plan, which has been met with criticism from experts and environmental campaigners. And King Charles has become the first British monarch to address the German Parliament. And speaking in German, he talked about Ukraine.
The unprovoked invasion of Ukraine has inflicted the most unimaginable suffering on so many innocent people.
Hello and welcome to what is the last edition of Outside Source, and we're going to start the programme in Russia. Because a short while ago, the White House advised US citizens either residing in Russia or travelling to Russia to either leave immediately or, if they've not arrived, to not make the journey. This all follows a court in Moscow ordering that a US journalist is kept in custody over spying charges. Now to an important story here in the UK, because a man has been found guilty of murdering a 9-year-old in her home in Liverpool last summer. Thomas Cashman fired shots through the family's front door while chasing another man through the streets. The 34-year-old was also found guilty of wounding Olivia Pratt-Corbell's mother in the attack and the attempted murder of a convicted drugs dealer, Joseph Nee. Police said that Olivia's death should not be in vain, and they hope that today's verdict will deter others from using guns on the streets. Our North of England correspondent Judith Moritz reports from Manchester Crown Court. Now here in the UK, the government's released a new plan to reach net zero by 2050. The plan matters in terms of climate change, of course, but it's also political. It'll also impact the UK's economy, and we have a number of details to show you on this. First of all, here's the Prime Minister. Well, we've already had stories from Russia, from the US, from the UK. Next on Outside Source, we turn to Germany. It's the second day of King Charles's state visit, and we've seen the first address to the German Parliament by a British monarch. Here's some of it. Now, just before we finish, I wanted to quickly mention that this is the last edition of Outside Source. We're wrapping up after 9 years on air, and if I think back to 2014, I guess right from the start, we were trying to find new ways to distill and explain the news, and we've been trying ever since. I'll let you judge how we've done, but that was the aim anyway, and it's been a privilege to make the programme for you. I should say this work's definitely going to carry on, because while the programme's stopping, from next week there'll be a new BBC News channel, and I and many of the OS team will be contributing to it. We're going to be making our explainers too, so we're not disappearing, I promise. But for Outside Source, time is up. And so whether you're in the UK or elsewhere around the world, from all of us, many thanks for watching today and for watching over the years. Bye-bye.
Hello there. It's been quite unsettled recently across the northwest of Europe thanks to low pressure systems